In 1978, a group of nuns went down to a police station in Belgium with a wild story. Someone very close to them had been doing horrific things to the most vulnerable members of their community. The nuns showed detectives a journal, and the contents of that journal would ignite a murder investigation. And one of the town's most well-known and beloved members was at the center of everything. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today is day 4 of our 5-day lineup. I've been uploading a brand new video every day leading up to Halloween, and we still have one more video to go after this one. So consider subscribing and hitting the bell if you want to know when the last one goes live. Today we're talking about the serial killer nun known as Sister Godfrida. Cecile Van Beek was born in 1933 in Belgium, and she grew up in the small village of Overmeer. From a young age, Cecile knew that she wanted to devote her life to her religion and she wanted to become a nun. She really wanted to do something impactful and good for her community. She knew she wanted to grow up and help those in need. And so at the age of just 15, Cecile joined the Apostolic Congregation of Holy Joseph, and she loved it. She was totally in her element. She became known as Sister Godfrida, and she and the other nuns would spend most of their time working in the local geriatric center taking care of elderly patients. And Sister Godfrida was really great at this job. She was very well loved by the elderly and the other nuns, and she gained a reputation for her kind and caring nature. She was also known as a person who could get a job done and get it done right. She was very dependable, and all of these traits really paid off because she was eventually promoted to Mother Superior, so she was like the head nun of the convent. Sister Godfrida went on to work at various other geriatric hospitals in the area, and she was even made geriatric manager over a hospital in Wetteren. Things were going just the way Sister Godfrida had imagined. She was literally living her dream. But around the early 70s, she started having some concerning health problems. She was having these super intense headaches, and nothing that she did seemed to relieve the pain. And eventually, the pain got to be so debilitating that she went and saw a specialist, and they ran some tests, and it was discovered that Sister Godfrida had a brain tumor. This was devastating news, of course, but the doctors were pretty optimistic about surgery, and they really thought that they could remove the tumor completely. And so in 1974, she underwent surgery, and it was a success. However, this would mark the beginning of Sister Godfrida's downfall. Her behavior and her overall attitude had shifted dramatically after the surgery. She was no longer the kind, caring nun that she had been before. She was short-tempered, and she would get really agitated with the patients. She would also treat the other nuns in the convent horribly. She would become mean, and she would even beat the nuns. And she even started wearing provocative clothing. Now, I don't know what nuns consider to be provocative. This could have just been like a tank top or something, but either way, she started occasionally showing a little bit of skin, and the nuns did not like this. The doctor explained that this could happen after brain surgery. Sometimes there would be a shift in personality and temperament, and this was just an unfortunate side effect that they would have to deal with. But the situation just escalated over the next few years. First of all, Sister Godfrida's treatment of the elderly patients changed big time. The patients had always loved Sister Godfrida. She had always been like super gentle and kind to them, but now she just seemed to be constantly annoyed by everything they did, and she had a very short fuse. She would get frustrated really easily, and she was no longer gentle with her patients either. She was doing things to hurt them, and it seemed very intentional. There isn't a lot of details on what she did to hurt the patients, but we do know that she would very aggressively rip their catheter out, which of course caused a lot of pain and discomfort. And the reports on this case have referred to her treatment of the patients as torture. She also started making sexual advances towards the other nuns. She would say like sexually suggestive things to them and ask them to like do sexual things with her, and it made the nuns feel very uncomfortable. Most of them rejected her advances, but some of the nuns did give in because they were so afraid that she would beat them if they said no. And you have to remember that Sister Godfrida is in her 40s at this point. She has been a part of this convent for the majority of her lifetime. She joined at the age of 15. She was their Mother Superior. So all of this stuff that she was suddenly doing, it was very disturbing to the other nuns. This wasn't the Sister Godfrida that they knew and loved. Now, in addition to just the overall shift in her personality, Sister Godfrida also became addicted to pain medication, specifically morphine. She had been given morphine after her brain surgery, and she never fully weaned herself off, and so she had become dependent on it. She worked at a hospital, and so she just started stealing the morphine from her place of work. But she couldn't continue to steal the hospital supply because because she was worried that the doctors and the other nuns would start to get suspicious. So she stole a prescription pad from the hospital and she would forge false prescriptions for herself and then turn them into the pharmacy. And to fund her drug addiction, she started stealing from the elderly patients in her care. She would take valuables and money from their room, and the patients were allowed to ask the staff to get them items from like the grocery store and stuff. And the staff would go out and get the items and bring them back, and the patient would then pay them for the items. And Sister Godfrida started lying to the patients about how much the items cost, and she would make them pay double, sometimes triple the actual amount. And the other nuns figured out that she was doing this because one day one of the patients asked a different nun to get him some beer. So she went out, she bought the beer, and when she came back and gave it to the man, he handed her some money, and it was way more than what was needed. And so she tells the man, like, this is way too much money. And he said, well, that's the amount that I've been paying to Sister Godfrida. And so that's how the other nuns figured out that she was lying to the patients. Some of the other nuns that worked in the hospital also overheard Sister Godfrida offer to perform sexual favors on some of the elderly patients in exchange for money. She was like a completely different person. Before the surgery, Sister Godfrida's sole purpose in life was to help other people, but now all she cares about is obtaining money to fund her addiction. Earlier I mentioned how she would make sexual advances towards the other nuns and they were just completely appalled. But there was one local nun that was flattered by these advances. This nun was a teacher at a Catholic school, and the two of them started up a relationship. And with all the money that Sister Godfrida was stealing from her patients, she and her new girlfriend were going out for nights on the town. They were hitting up fancy restaurants and ordering expensive steaks and wine. They also rented out a really nice apartment together that was right by the hospital, and Sister Godfrida would live between the convent and the apartment that she was sharing with her girlfriend. So everything continues like this for months. Sister Godfrida was carrying on the secret relationship with the nun. She is addicted to morphine, and she has also added alcohol and cocaine into the mix. And she is also secretly sleeping with a retired priest in the area as well. All the while, she is carrying out her duties as Mother Superior at the convent. She's also still working at the geriatric hospital, and she is funding her drug habit by stealing money and valuables from her elderly patients. As you can imagine, the other nuns, especially the ones who were working with her in the hospital, they are seeing a lot of very concerning things, and they are taking note of everything. Some of them did go and talk to the priest about all of this, but they were basically told that they must be mistaken because Sister Godfrida would never do anything like that, and they were told to keep their mouths shut. It definitely sounds like the church was trying to cover all of this up because it seems impossible that they didn't know what was going on, at least some of what she was doing. She wasn't keeping a low profile. She and her girlfriend were going out to public restaurants and being very lavish, and all of the missing items and the missing money from the patients' rooms at times when Sister Godfrida had been the only one there, all signs pointed to her doing these things. And then the situation took a very dark turn when patients in the hospital started dying at an alarming rate. This was a small facility. It was only a 38-bed hospital, and of the 38 patients, 21 died within 1 year. That is a huge amount of deaths for such a small hospital in just a year. Now, a few of the nuns who worked at the hospital, they were super suspicious of Sister Godfrida. They really thought that she could be responsible for some of the deaths. They had seen her abusing morphine. They had seen her drinking alcohol while she was actually up there working at the hospital. They already knew that she was the one stealing the money and valuables from the rooms, and now all of these suspicious deaths were happening. And so they started keeping a journal about all of the weird things that were happening. They started keeping track of which patients died, when and how they died, and who had been with them last before they died. And they started to see a pattern in the manner of death and the person who was with the patient last. Again, all signs pointed to Sister Godfrida. Several of the deceased patients had died suddenly, right before being in the care of Sister Godfrida. In fact, there were times when a patient would start to decline suddenly, and Sister Godfrida would kick everyone out of the room so that she could be alone with them. And when the families would come to collect their loved ones' belongings from the hospital, they would notice money and valuables were missing. In 1977, Sister Godfrida was forced to take a leave of absence and go into a drug rehabilitation program. And this didn't work. It failed because she was having people sneak drugs in for her. Sending her to a rehabilitation center was probably just an attempt by the church to get her out of the picture for a bit and just kind of try to rein her in. It's believed that the church knew a lot more than what they were letting on. And with all the evidence piling up, the nuns could no longer keep silent. They had serious reason to believe that Sister Godfrida was systematically killing off the patients, and they needed to make her stop before more people died. So on January 16th, 1978, the three nuns who worked at the hospital, Sisters Paita, Francesca, and Godiva, grabbed their journal and they went down to the Wetteren police station. investigation. And they told them everything about their suspicions that their Mother Superior was murdering people at the geriatric hospital. And they showed them that journal with logs of all the odd things that had been happening. And I'm so happy that the nuns ended up going to the police instead of going back to the church, because I really think that they would have just confiscated that journal and they would have forced them to keep quiet. Thankfully, the police did take this seriously and an investigation was finally open. They brought Sister Godfrida in for questioning and she didn't deny anything. She actually admitted to killing 3 patients by injecting them with insulin. The 3 patients that she admitted to killing were 87-year-old Maria Vandergunst, 82-year-old Peter Digman, and 78-year-old Leon Mahofer. My 17-year-old baby is going to join us for the last part of this video. Sister Godfrida admitted that she had injected each of the patients with a lethal amount of insulin, and once they were dead, she stole their money and their valuables. Now, she only admitted to 3 murders, but it's thought that she may be responsible for more than 17 patient deaths between 1976 and 1978. It's estimated that Sister Godfrida stole more than $30,000 from patients over the years, and she used that money to fund her drug and alcohol addiction. When Sister Godfrida was asked why she had killed her patients, she said that they were making too much noise and getting on her nerves. She didn't seem to have any remorse for what she had done. A psychiatric evaluation determined that she was not fit to stand trial due to insanity. I think the fact that she had that brain operation had something to do with that decision. Sister Godfrida was committed to a mental institution and she died in 2019 at the age of 86. This case completely shocked the country and it actually became international news. Papers here in America were reporting on it, and there was even an Italian movie released in 1979 that was loosely inspired by this case. It's called Killer Nun, and it was originally banned in Britain, and it was only allowed to be released with cuts. But in 2006, the full movie was made available. You can tell that they did loosely base the main character off of Sister Godfrida, but they just completely exaggerated everything.
My happiness.
No, sister. That's enough.
And that is all I have on this case. Let me know what you think about this one down in the comments. If you found this video interesting, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll know when the next one goes live, which is tomorrow. We still have one more day till Halloween, which means we have one more video in the lineup. And as always, I appreciate each and every one of you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.